Ahoy Captains, it's Vaz again with another video from World of Warships Legends. And today we are back with another Versus video for you. In Versus we compare two similar and readily available ships to determine if one is better than the other. We tally the points up as we go, and at the end we hope to determine a winner. We'll also throw in a little bit of information and some tips on the builds and playstyles of these ships. In today's Versus, we have two USN Tier 7 Premium Battleships. The Massachusetts was a campaign reward from late December to early February that was recently made available to everyone for 750,000 global XP, while the Alabama was the very first ship in Legends that could be bought for global XP. These sister ships were absolutely identical in real life, but how are they different in Legends? If you don't have either, which ship do you buy first? If you do have both, which one should you set sail in more often? Is one better than the other? Let's find out together in Versus. But first we'll start with a little bit of info on both ships. The Bama and the Big Mammy both belong to the South Dakota class of fast battleships, and the both of them were commissioned in 1942. Now on to the playstyle of these ships. It's common knowledge that the Massachusetts has longer reaching secondaries than the Alabama, but should that one factor change the way you play it? I tried my best to create a secondary focused brawler out of the Mass, but failed miserably over and over. I used Lee as a commander and chose the appropriate upgrades, but I found that the reduction in the ship's accuracy coupled with the type of armor that's not really suited for brawling made for low damage matches and quick deaths. And the secondaries didn't really do enough damage to make up for the reduced shots that were missed by my main battery. So instead, I recommend you play the ships exactly the same, and think of the Mass's secondary range as exactly that, your secondary focus. Instead, focus on the ship's main damage dealers, its main battery. Therefore, I recommend the offensively minded Sims as your commander. For sim skills, I recommend Flammable Cannoneer, Gyrating Drill Brits, Marksmanship, and Reaching Out XXL. For the legendary skill, I go with Will to Rebuild, although the newest skill, Fight Fire with Fire, is also a good option. For inspirations, there are a lot of choices out there, but I'd recommend Cunningham as I would for all battleships, and here I've chosen D-Reveal to help reduce reload time. Other options I'd recommend would be Madden, Celiax, or Takagi. Moving over to upgrades, both ships have the same 4 starting upgrade slots, and I've settled on the same upgrades for both ships. Starting with slot 1, your options are Secondary Battery Mod 2, AA Guns Mod 2, and Main Battery Mod 2. For both ships, I've chosen the Secondary Battery Mod because I don't find the Main Battery Mod to be very useful, considering it increases your reload time, and I don't find myself in enough carrier games to warrant the choice of the AA Gun mod. Next up is slot 2. Your choices are Steering Gears Mod 2, Propulsion Mod 2, or Damage Control System Mod 2. Originally I chose Steering Gears for the Massachusetts, but recently I changed over to Propulsion because I do like propulsion mods on my battleships. But really this choice here is all up to your personal preference. Slot 3 only contains one option, so we're just going to skip right past it onto slot 4. Your options are Artillery Plotting Room Mod 2, Secondary Battery Mod 3, AA Guns Mod 3, and Main Battery Mod 3. In the 4th slot, I highly recommend Artillery Plotting Room because that decrease to your dispersion is very invaluable in countering camos and other skills that your opponents will use to increase incoming dispersion. And now we'll move over to the loadout screen. And here we have our first difference for you. The repair party for the Massachusetts gives you 1,260 more points of healing over the course of 3 repair parties during a match. But it's not quite enough to warrant a point on its own, but we are going to put a pin in that for now. The consumable options are exactly the same for both ships, and the choice is entirely up to you. I usually go with the spotter on the American battleships to increase the accuracy of some opportunistic shots. But I wouldn't blame you for choosing the secondaries consumable on the Massachusetts in order to have a little bit of fun. Next up is the stats screen. First off, we have survivability, and the Massachusetts has a full 3,000 extra hit points. Combine that with its greater heal, that gives it a point for having a larger health pool advantage. We're going to save the armor for the armor viewer. And the Alabama's torque belt is slightly better, but only at 3%. And that difference is not really enough to call it an advantage, but it is something to take note of. Moving on to artillery, another thing to take note of is the Alabama's slight 200-meter range advantage. Again, it's way too small to warrant a point, but it is also notable. A bigger difference is the turret traverse speed. The Alabama has a 5-second better turn time, which nets it its first point of the matchup. The final difference with regards to artillery are the secondary ranges. The range of the secondaries are the Massachusetts reach 2.4 kilometers further than the Bama's, and that large difference is the second point of the matchup for the Big Mammy. Next up are the anti-aircraft guns. There's a whole bunch of calculations here, I'm just going to spare you and just get to the results. The DPM for the Bama is higher, but the average range for the Mass is further, so we're going to have to call AA a tie. Maneuver and non-over to maneuverability, the speed and turn circle of both ships is exactly the same. Again, the Bama has a very small rudder shift time advantage, although the difference isn't going to be very noticeable in this case. Next up is concealment. The Bama yet again has a tiny concealment advantage, but 100 meters is basically the tiniest difference you can have. The Alabama really did have a lot of small advantages in the stats, didn't it? Here we have the armor viewer. As you'd probably expect, the armor for these ships is exactly the same, so we can pretty much skip this screen. And that already brings us to our summary. The Alabama has 1 point for its increased turret traverse speed, while the Massachusetts has 2 points for a larger hit point pool and a longer secondary range. Now, although the Mass does come out on top 2-1 in big advantages, the Bama had many minor advantages, making these ships extremely similar in strength. The Alabama has minor advantages with regards to its torque belt, firing range, AA DPM, rudder shift, and concealment, while the Mass's only minor advantage was its AA range. So in the end, I think both of these ships are great. It just really comes down to your personal preferences and what advantages you're really looking for. Personally, I have a hard time looking past that hit point pool advantage the Massachusetts has over the Alabama, but I still have a special place in my heart for the first Global XP ship that I ever obtained. I remember having a lot of great matches in the Alabama. So what do you guys think? Which ship do you like better? Let me know in the comments down below. Well, until next time, this wraps up another version of Versus. If you did like that video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. If you want to see more of my videos, hit that subscribe button. And as always, stay healthy and do what makes you happy.